Heyo! Hello again out there, Bearded Nation. Bearded Brother Matt here, back again with yet another Trade Dissection. This time, we need to look at a move that has had some major ramifications throughout the NHL that last until this very day. This is about the time that the Canucks traded away a player who would become a legend because they weren't impressed, here are the quotes, by his defense. Yes, this is the time that Vancouver traded away BAM BAM Cam Neely to Boston. So, for those of you who don't know about Cam Neely or who are only aware of him as the president or GM of the Bruins today, let's get into it. Neely defined the idea of a power forward in hockey. He was selected 9th overall in the 1983 draft by Vancouver, and he didn't really get into a lot of games for them. He was behind both Stan Schmiel and Tony Tanti on the depth chart, and combined with the fact that the head coach didn't like his defense, he played 3 years in Vancouver with a total of 201 games and only put up 104 points, 51 of them goals. So, in June 6th, 1986, the Canucks make the deal with the Bruins, and it would be Cam Neely and a 1987 first-round pick that ended up being 3rd overall to the Bruins. And in return, they got Barry Pettersson. So let's save Neely and that first and take a look at how, Vancouver did in this trade. Barry Pettersson had been a 40-ish goal scorer in 3 of his first 4 seasons in the league. However, in 84-85, it was discovered that he had a benign tumor in his shoulder and needed surgery. He returned for 22 games before needing a second, more serious surgery that would also remove some muscle tissue. The following season, he returned to the lineup, but only posted 76 points. I mean, that was good for 4th on the team, but it represented a 40-point drop from his last healthy season. So that summer, they sent him to Vancouver for Neely and that first-round pick. Vancouver was banking on the fact that he would regain his form from before the injury. He never actually did. Peterson would play 233 games in Vancouver and put up only 197 points and only 60 goals during that time frame. Finally, Vancouver would realize that he wasn't going to get his game back, and they traded him away. They would package him with Rod Buskas and Tony Tanti. Hey, we talked about Tony Tanti. And send them to the Pittsburgh Penguins for Dave Capuano, Andrew McBain, and Dan Quinn. Alright, McBain is the easiest to clean up, so let's talk about him. He played 45 games over 3 seasons with Vancouver, had 5 goals, 10 assists for 15 points, and then left in free agency. Done. Capuano played 2 seasons in Vancouver and put up for a total of 88 games. He only put up 52 points, only 16 of them goals. Meh. He did, however, get traded, along with a 1994 4th-round pick, 91st overall, used on Ryan Duthie, and sent to the Tampa Bay Lightning for Anatoly Semenov. He played 1 season in Vancouver, a total of 62 games. In those games, he had 44 points, and 10 of them were goals. The Canucks would lose him to Anaheim in the expansion draft. Now, that's done. Boom. Over. Dan Quinn. Dan Quinn played parts of 2 seasons in Vancouver, totaling 101 games there. In that time, he had 83 points with 34 of them goals. That's pretty good. Vancouver, seeking to get some more assets, traded him away. They would package him with Garth Butcher and send them to the Blues for Jeff Courtnall, Robert Dirk, Sergio Momesso, and Cliff Ronin, and a 1992 fifth-round pick, 110th overall. All right, so let's get the easy ones out of the way first, and by that I mean the ones that were never traded. Jeff Courtnall. Jeff Courtnall was a star. Played 5 seasons in Vancouver, totaling 292 games. In those games, he had 246 points, 102 of them goals. That's tidy work indeed. He would, however, leave in free agency, so that's done. Cliff Ronin. Cliff Ronin was another star-quality player in this deal. He would stay in Vancouver for 6 seasons, playing 366 games. In those games, he would post 328 points, 112 of them goals. Star, indeed. But he would also leave in free agency. So that ends Ronin in Vancouver. Now, Robert Dirk. Dirk was a 6'4" defenseman who shot left-handed. He played 4 seasons in Vancouver and racked up 401 penalty minutes. Yeah, I think everybody knows what he was there to do. Then he was traded to the Blackhawks for a 1994 fourth-round pick, 92nd overall. The Canucks would use that pick on Mike Dubinsky, who never played a game in the NHL. Sergio Momesso would play 5 seasons in Vancouver, a total of 269 games. In those games, he totaled 141 points, 68 of them goals. Solid work! Not star level, but kind of an everyday player level. He would be traded to Toronto for Mike Ridley. Ridley had 2 ho-hum seasons in Vancouver before leaving the team, and apparently the NHL. Guess what? That's it. That's literally everything for, well, Brian Looney, but meh. This is literally everything they got for Cam Neely. So now we've got to go talk about that guy, Cam Neely. Okay. I'd say they made out pretty good here for a guy who can't play defense. But I'll let you judge. Neely played parts of 10 seasons in Boston. In that time, he played in 525 games and put up 590 points, 344 of them goals. Yes, you heard that right. More than a point a game, and more than half of them were goals. Those numbers would probably be more absurd, but an incident in the 1990-91 playoffs would forever alter the trajectory of his career. In those playoff games, Ulf Samuelsson would hit Neely with a vicious knee-on-knee hit that would send Cam to the IR. He would receive a rather deep thigh contusion and would miss most of the following season with injury. It just would not heal. The season after, he would also miss most of, as it was discovered that rather than healing, the bruise was ossifying. That means turning to bone, for those of you who don't speak medic. He would make it back the season after that for 49 games in the 93-94 season, and he would score 50 goals! He would also win the Masterson Trophy that year. Sadly, after the 95-96 season at the age of 30, that injury would force him to retire from playing. In his time with the Bruins, he went to 2 Stanley Cup finals, losing both to the Oilers, and 4 All-Star games. His number 8 has been retired by the Bruins. He did win a Stanley Cup in 2011 as team president, and oh yeah, he was elected to the Hockey Hall of Fame. This right here is enough to say that the Bruins won this trade, but they also had a pick. Remember? The 3rd overall pick in 1987? That would be used on Glenn Wesley, a 6'1", 207-pound left shot defenseman. He played 7 seasons in Boston and put up 207 points in 537 games before being traded away. That is pretty doggone good, and Hartford agreed, ponying up 3 first-round picks for him. 95, 96, and 97. They would be 9th, 8th, and 8th, respectively. So, what would they use those picks on? Well, Kyle McLaren, Jonathan Aitken, and Sergei Samsonov. Oof. Okay. So, let's start with the easy one first. Aitken. Aitken played all of 3 games in Boston and was a -3. No goals, no assists. That's it. Done. McLaren was a 6'4", 237-pound left shot defenseman. He played 7 seasons for Boston. In that time, he played 417 games, scoring 124 points, 34 of them goals. Not bad in the 90s for a guy who played on the blue line. Boston would package him with a 2004 4th-round pick, 126th overall, that would be used on Torrey Mitchell. And they would send them to San Jose for a pair of Jeffs. Jeff Hackett and Jeff Gilson. Hackett was a goalie. He played 18 games for the Bruins after the trade. He went 8-9 with an .894 save percentage. Not horrid, not great. Played some games in the playoffs for them. Meh. He would leave in free agency. And after the next season would retire. Jeff Gilson, he played one mostly disappointed season in Boston before they traded him back to San Jose. And what did they get back for him? They traded him straight up for Brad Boyes. Boyes played 2 pretty good seasons in Boston, racking up 103 points in 144 games. They would trade him straight up to the Blues for Dennis Weidman. Weidman had 165 points in 256 games from the blue line before being traded by Boston. They packaged him with a 2010 first-rounder, 15th overall, that would be used on Derek Forbot, and a 2011 third-round, 90th overall pick that would be used on Kyle Rao. And they traded it to Florida for Gregory Campbell and Nathan Horton. Campbell played 358 games with Boston, but never put up gaudy offensive numbers. He did rack up 306 penalty minutes. Man, Boston just has a brand and finds people that fit with it. Horton was more or less the same, 169 games in Boston and 161 penalty minutes. Both would leave as free agents and both would sign in Columbus. Now, on to Sergei Samsonov. Calder winner and all-rookie team member. Played 514 games over 8 seasons in Boston and put up 376 points in that time. Then along came Edmonton, and they proposed a trade that Boston laughed and said yes to. Samsonov was traded straight up to Edmonton for Marty Reasoner, Jan Stastny, and a 2006 second-round pick, 50th overall. Now, Reasoner played 19 games in Boston and had 8 points. Meh. Stastny played 38 games and had 5 points, but he got traded to St. Louis for a 2007 fifth-round pick, 130th overall. That would be Dennis Rule. He never played a game in the NHL. That second rounder, though, yeah, I think that one they turned out very well because they used that on Milan Lucic. Dude, again, Boston has a brand. Lucic played 566 games in Boston, had 342 points. He also racked up 772 penalty minutes. No, that is not a typo. Yeah, young Milan Lucic was a licensed fist dispensary. You didn't even need a card and you could get a dose. He would, however, eventually be traded. Boston would send him straight up to the LA Kings for Colin Miller, Martin Jones, and a 2015 first-round pick, 13th overall. Miller played 2 seasons in Boston, 103 games and 29 points in that period. Also, 94 penalty minutes. Boston would lose him to Vegas in the expansion draft. They would use that first-round pick on a guy named Jacob Zaboral. Now, Zaboral has played 70 games to date in Boston and hasn't really stuck in the lineup. I mean, he plays defense, and Boston is kind of stacked to the gills there, so not a lot of room currently. Martin Jones never played a game in Boston. He would be flipped literally like 2 days later to, hey, look, it's San Jose again. Let's see what we can place them for this time. This time, it was Sean Corrali and a 2016 first-round pick, 29th overall. So, let's get into it. Corrali played 5 years in Boston, 270 games, 68 points, 134 penalty minutes. The pick became Trent Frederick. To date, played 185 games in the NHL, all with Boston, and has 187 penalty minutes. So yeah, Boston obviously has a brand, and that brand is finding people who will separate your skull from the rest of your body. So you know what? It's obvious that Boston absolutely smashed this trade. They fleeced Vancouver in this trade. You got a Hall of Famer, and then you used the pick that you got, and you turned it into Milan Lucic and Jacob Zaboral and Trent Frederick? Nah, man. There's only one way this ends, and that's with Boston giving you the thumbs up and smiling with a bloody mouth. Okay. Now, this dissection isn't quite over, and that's because either Zaboral or Frederick could still be traded away, and then this just goes on. I would put my money on Zaboral being traded before Frederick, because Frederick fits the Boston mentality, but either one could potentially happen if Neely in Boston gets a good offer. However, for now, that is where this one ends. Next time, I think we're going to skip the NFL, as I'm still not quite sure what I want to do there. If you have any suggestions, go ahead and put them down in the comments for me. But I do have an idea for the NBA, however. I think we will look at that time that a championship caliber team was scrapped. And what happened to a piece of that team who was always considered a sidekick? I'll leave you with that hint. If you figure it out or think you have the answer, go ahead and post that down in the comments. If you like this, go ahead and hit like, hit subscribe the same way Neely would, and share this with your friends that you think might enjoy it. Stay bearded, and as always, peace.